My name's Erica. Grew up poor, which meant you either got tough or got left behind. My family wasn't much, just me, Ma, and Pa. We scraped by in a cramped house, the walls thin as paper. Early on, Ma put a needle in my hand, saying, "Stitch your own path, girl." And so I did. School was just the place I waited till I could get back to sewing. Teachers talked about math and history, but my mind was on fabrics and patterns. By 15, I was mending jeans and jackets for folks in the neighborhood. Life took a real turn when I met Tom. He was the cousin of my best bud, Sarah. I remember that day clear as crystal. We were at Sarah's family barbecue, and he was there, flipping burgers and laughing loud enough to scare the birds. "Hey, Erica." Sarah waved me over, a big grin on her face. "Come meet my cousin, Tom. He's been dying to meet the girl who fixed his favorite jacket." Tom wiped his hands on his apron and reached out. "That was you? Hell, you saved my life with that fix." I laughed, brushing a loose strand of hair from my face. "It was just a few stitches." "A few stitches," she says. Tom chuckled, giving me a look like I just pulled a rabbit out of a hat. "You're too modest, Erica." We hit it off straight away. He was easygoing, the kind of guy who'd give you the shirt off his back and make a joke while doing it. The more we talked, the more I liked him. He was genuine, a rare thing in this world. Tom was a truck driver, always on the road. Said it was lonely sometimes, watching the world through a windshield with no one to share the view. "It's just me and the long haul, but I'd love someone to come back to," he admitted one evening, the sunset making shadows dance on his face. Tom was the kind of man who never said no, especially to his family. He'd often joke about it, saying how his big sister Linda got everything she ever wanted from him. "She's got me wrapped around her finger, but don't you worry, Erica. I've got plenty of yes left for you." I'd roll my eyes and jab back, "Better save the best ones for me, Tom." He'd laugh and pull me close, and in those moments, I knew we were right for each other. He was kind and a pushover for sure, but me? I was the punchy one, and together, we balanced out just right. Love hit fast, and we married just as quickly. It felt right, like stepping into a story that was meant just for us. Life with Tom was never dull, even when the road took him away more often than I liked. He was out there driving his truck, traversing from one city to another, while I kept the home fires burning and the sewing machine humming. You could say I had become quite the thrifty one over the years. Every penny from my sewing gigs went straight into a jar, and before we knew it, there was $20,000 saved up. It wasn't just pocket change, it was our ticket to something bigger. One evening, Tom rolled in, tired but happy to be home. I was stitching up a storm in the corner of our living room turned makeshift studio. The hum of the machine paused as I made my pitch. "Tom, what if we stop just making ends meet and start planning to get ahead? I've been saving up. We've got enough to put down on a new truck." Tom, who was halfway through a sandwich, stopped and looked up. "You serious, Erica? That's a lot of dough. You've been stashing away that much?" "Yeah, and it's just sitting there. Imagine if you could run your own gigs, choose your routes. We could pay off the lease with the extra jobs you take." He set his sandwich down, wiping his hands on his jeans, his brain ticking over. Could work. I'm sick of hauling for pennies for the other guy. Running my own show could mean real money. So, we did it. We found a decent truck, not the newest model, but reliable enough to handle the long hauls Tom was planning. The day we went to look at it, Tom was like a kid in a candy store, checking every part, talking shop with the dealer so I barely kept up. "Erica, she's solid, good mileage, engine's in top shape. We take care of her, she'll take care of us," he said, his eyes not leaving the truck. I nodded, trusting his judgment. "Let's do it then. Let's buy our future." And we did. Papers signed, handshakes exchanged, and the keys were in his hand. Tom got his license sorted out for the new routes we'd scoped out, and soon he was taking orders for intercity trips. Money was tight at first, every cent counted even more than before. But Tom was pulling in enough jobs to keep us on track with the lease payments. Meanwhile, I didn't sit idle. My sewing had turned from a side hustle into a serious business. Enough so, that 3 years down the line, I opened my own small studio. It wasn't much, just a little space I rented out on the main street. The start was rocky, clients trickling in slow. But I kept at it, word of mouth started doing its thing, and my little studio began to see regulars. It was another 2 years of hustle, but finally, things smoothed out. The studio was bringing in a stable income, and we made the last payment on the truck. All that money we used to pour into the lease? Now it was ours to keep. One night, over a quiet dinner, Tom and I decided it was time for the next big step. We've been doing good, Tom. Really good. Maybe it's time we thought about getting a place of our own. A real house, not this cramped apartment. Tom, who'd been quietly listening, nodded. I'd been thinking the same. We've worked hard, Erica. We deserve it. So, we started house hunting, and before long, we found a small townhouse. It was perfect for us, just enough space, a little yard, and a room that I could turn into a proper studio. We moved in, and it felt like a fresh start. Everything we'd worked for was finally coming together. After we settled into our new townhouse, Tom and I decided it was high time we took a break. We packed up and headed out to visit his mom, who lived a few cities over. Since Tom's dad passed, his mom had been living with his sister, Linda, and her 2 kids. Tom's mom was a sweet lady, always had been good to me. But Linda, well, that's another story. She and I never really saw eye to eye. Something about the way I came up, made my own way, she didn't like it, always hinting that I was just lucky. We pulled up to their house, a cozy little place with toys scattered across the front yard. Tom's mom greeted us with hugs and homemade cookies, her warmth a comforting blanket. But Linda, she just nodded, her smile tight, eyes scanning us like we were pages in a book she didn't want to read. Dinner was tense from the get-go. Linda cooked, which I made sure to compliment, but you could cut the tension with a knife. As we sat down, the small talk fluttered around, never landing anywhere substantial until Linda, stirring her drink, turned to me. So, Erica, how's that little sewing business of yours? Making good money? Her tone was casual, but her eyes were sharp, prodding. I paused, fork in midair. It's a studio, Linda, and it's doing well, thanks. And Tom's trucking? I bet that's bringing in plenty, huh? She was leaning in now, her voice a mix of curiosity and something darker. I set my fork down, my appetite waning. Linda, I don't think it's very polite to dig into people's finances at the dinner table. I tried to change the subject, asked about her kids, her life. But Linda was like a dog with a bone, wouldn't let it go. The evening spiraled from there, her questions peppering the air until I couldn't take another bite. I think I'm full, I said abruptly, pushing my chair back. Thanks for dinner. I could feel Tom's eyes on me, the weight of an apology in his gaze. I headed to the living room, the echo of their whispers trailing me. Later, when Tom found me looking out the window, the room was dark, save for the streetlights casting shadows. He came up behind me, his voice low. Sorry about Linda. She's always been a bit much. I turned to face him, his features drawn in the dim light. Why do you let her talk to you, or to us, like that? He shrugged, a helpless gesture that didn't sit right with me. I guess I'm used to giving in to her. Keeps the peace, you know? But at what cost? I pressed, my voice firm. She walks all over you, because she knows she can. And now me? Tom ran a hand through his hair, the lines of his face deepening. I know. It's just, complicated. She's been having a hard time since Dad passed, and Mom relies on me to not stir things up. I sighed, stepping closer. I get it, Tom, but it's not right. You can't let her push us around, make us uncomfortable in our own family. Where does it end? The next dinner was just as stressful. I tried to make conversation about benign things, hoping to keep the evening light, but Linda had other plans. She wasted no time, diving straight into dangerous waters. You know, since you two have done so well for yourselves, she started, her voice dripping with a mix of envy and accusation, I think it's only fair that you think about the rest of us who haven't been so lucky. Tom shifted uncomfortably in his seat, looking anywhere but at his sister. I clenched my fork a little tighter, feeling the calm before the storm. Linda continued, undeterred by our silence. In fact, I think it's only right if you two give up your claim on Mom's property. After all, you don't need it. I do. I was stunned. Discussing inheritance in front of Tom's mother, who was very much alive and sitting right there, was beyond inappropriate, it was disrespectful. Linda, I can't believe you're bringing this up now, I said, my voice low and steady. It's Mom's decision, not ours or yours. But Linda plowed ahead, her voice rising. Oh, come on, Erica. You don't need the money. You don't need the house. I'm here with 2 kids, trying to make ends meet. It should be mine. I need it more than you do. Tom looked like he wanted to sink into the floor. He hated confrontation, especially with his sister, but even he looked like he might speak up this time. Before he could, however, his mom intervened. That's enough, Linda, she said, her voice firm, leaving no room for argument. I've already discussed this with my lawyer. The house will go to you and the children, and the money I've saved will go to Tom. That's final. Linda's face turned a shade of red I hadn't seen before. But the house is old. And Erica doesn't need the money, they make plenty. Tom's mom fixed a stern gaze on her daughter. The house being old doesn't change my decision, and it's not your place to comment on Erica's finances. What you need to do is stop counting on others, and maybe get a job to support your children. Silence fell like a heavy curtain. Linda, mouth snapped shut and cheeks burning, didn't utter another word. Dinner ended quietly, and the rest of the evening passed with minimal interaction. The remainder of the week, I spent a lot of time with Tom's mom. The day we were leaving, she pulled me aside, handing me a small, ornate box. This has been in the family for years, she said, her eyes locking onto mine. It's filled with coins from different countries. I've added to it over the years. I want you to have it, to remember me by. I was touched, unsure what to say. Thank you, I will cherish it. Study them when I'm gone, she added, a hint of mystery in her tone. There's more to them than meets the eye. We hugged, a long, tight embrace that said everything words couldn't. It had been a month since our last, somewhat strained, visit to see Tom's mom. Life had slipped back into its normal rhythm, Tom returning from a long haul on the road and me buried in fabric and threads at my studio, rushing to meet an urgent order. That ordinary afternoon shattered with a single phone call. Tom answered his phone, his face draining of color as he listened. Linda? His voice was tight, worried. After a pause, his shoulders slumped. Oh, no. Okay, I'll be there. He hung up, looking lost. What happened? I asked, my heart sinking at his expression. It's Mom. She passed away, Tom managed, his voice barely a whisper. I felt a chill run down my spine. I'm so sorry, Tom. When's the funeral? Tomorrow, he replied, the word heavy between us. Tomorrow? That's so soon. Why didn't Linda tell us sooner? I frowned, concern lacing my tone. Tom shook his head, just as confused and frustrated. Before he could respond, I snatched the phone from the table and dialed Linda back, my pulse racing with a mix of anger and dread. Linda, why are we only hearing about this now? And why so rushed? I demanded as soon as she picked up. Erica, this really isn't your concern. I've been too upset, and we're trying to respect Mom's wishes. Linda snapped, her voice cold. And what wishes are those? I pushed, needing to understand her hurried decisions. Mom said only blood relatives should attend the funeral. That's why we're keeping it small. Just family, not you, Linda explained, a bit too quickly. Tom, overhearing the conversation, gently interjected. If that's what Mom wanted, then we should respect her wishes. I'll go alone. Linda's response was almost too quick. Yes, that's best. I'll see you soon, Tom. After hanging up, the silence in our home was stifling. I helped Tom pack, folding his clothes quietly, my mind racing with doubts about Linda's intentions. Despite my misgivings, I booked Tom's train ticket online, each click a reminder of the distance this situation was putting between us. He hugged me, tight and long, then stepped out into the fading light of day. I watched as he drove off, feeling a mix of sorrow for his loss and irritation at Linda's vague explanations and hurried arrangements. The quiet in the house was heavy, the kind that weighs on you, makes every little noise seem louder. I couldn't shake the sinking feeling in my gut. Why hadn't his mom wanted me at the funeral? We had a good thing, a genuine respect for each other. It didn't add up. Dragging my feet back inside, I noticed the small, ornate box on the mantel, one that Tom's mom had entrusted to me during our last, happier visit. I sat down, the box in my lap, my fingers tracing the intricate patterns carved into the wood before I finally opened it. Inside, nestled among various old coins from around the world, was a folded piece of paper, clearly her handwriting visible even before I pulled it out. Unfolding the note, I read her words, each one a mix of warmth and warning. My dear Erica. Thank you for the laughter and strength you brought into our family. Please, make sure you are with Tom at my funeral. I know Linda well, she will try to sway him to give up his rightful share, playing on his kind nature. I trust you to stand by him, as he may not have the heart to stand up to her alone. I read it twice, then a third time, each word sinking in deeper. Linda had lied. She'd played us all, hoping to manipulate Tom in my absence. Rage bubbled up inside me, not just for the deception, but for the sheer audacity of her plan. I grabbed my phone and dialed Tom's number, pacing the room as it rang. Erica? What's up? I'm still at the station, Tom answered, his voice tired. You need to wait for me, please. Don't get on that train. I'm on my way. I didn't wait for his response. I ended the call, grabbed my bag, and headed out the door. My mind was racing as I hailed a taxi to the station. Traffic seemed to conspire against me, every red light a barrier to my urgency, but I made it just in time. Walking into Tom's late mother's house felt like stepping onto a stage where a drama was already in progress. The moment Linda saw both of us, her face twisted in a mix of surprise and anger. She almost sputtered. What are you doing here, Erica? Nobody called you. I met her glare steadily. I came to say goodbye to your mother, I said simply. Linda huffed, turning away to hide the fury in her eyes. The funeral was a modest affair. I stayed at the back during the ceremony, saying my silent goodbyes to a woman who had shown me nothing but kindness. Afterward, everyone returned to the house. The mood was somber as we gathered in the living room, waiting for the notary to arrive and read the will. Linda paced nervously, casting glances at me that could freeze boiling water. When the notary finally cleared his throat and opened his briefcase, everyone settled down. As per the last will and testament of Marjorie Ellen Davis, he began, his voice formal and echoing slightly in the hushed room. Linda's eyes were locked on the papers as the notary read through the legal jargon to the heart of the matter. To Linda, I bequeath the family home and all contained within. To Thomas, I bequeath the sum of $400,000. The reaction was immediate. Linda's face crumpled into tears, her sobs theatrically loud. But how can I live in that house? It's falling apart. I have no job, how will I provide for my children? Tom, ever the soft heart, looked at his sister with something akin to guilt. His eyes met mine, filled with a turmoil that said he was torn by his sister's pleas. The notary, unfazed by the display, asked if there were any questions. Linda, through her tears, begged Tom directly. Please, Tom, think of my kids. They're your nieces. We need that money more than you. Tom opened his mouth, likely to offer some kind of compromise. That was his nature. But I couldn't stand it anymore. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the wooden floor. The room fell silent, all eyes on me. Linda's sobs hiccuped into a shocked silence. "Enough, Linda," I said, my voice steady and clear. Everyone in the room turned to look at me, surprised by the force in my voice. "I know what you've been trying to do, and it's going to stop, right now." I pulled out the note, unfolding it with shaking hands, but a firm resolve. I read it aloud for everyone, my voice echoing in the suddenly quiet room. "Please make sure you are with Tom at my funeral. I know Linda well, she will try to sway him to give up his rightful share, playing on his kind nature." Linda's face went from sad to furious in a heartbeat. When I finished, she looked around, seemingly gauging if anyone would come to her defense. When no one did, she finally spoke, her voice venomous. "I deserve that money more than he does," she spat, standing up to face us all. "I have kids to care for, a house that's falling apart. Why shouldn't I have it?" It was Tom's turn to stand. "Because it's not what Mom wanted, Linda," he shouted, louder than I'd ever heard him before. "You've always used me, always expected me to just roll over and do what you say, because you're my sister. Well, not anymore." Linda recoiled as if he'd struck her, her face a mask of disbelief. She stared at him, her mouth open, tears stopping as if cut off by a switch. "I'm taking the inheritance Mom left me, and I'm putting it where it can do some good," Tom continued, his voice firm and resolute. The shock on Linda's face gave way to real tears, tears of defeat, not manipulation. She sobbed, covering her face with her hands, her act finally crumbling under the weight of Tom's declaration. We didn't stay much longer after that. Tom took my hand, and we walked out together, leaving Linda to her reality. As we drove home, the car was filled with a tense silence. Finally, Tom spoke, his voice quiet but strong. "I'm sorry for all this, Erica. For letting it go on this long. After securing the inheritance, we made some big moves. We split the $400,000, investing it smartly into both our futures. It felt good, right, even, to put that money to use in ways that would honor the memory of Tom's mom. First off, we bolstered the atelier. I hired a couple of skilled assistants and expanded our workspace. It was amazing to see my dream of a bustling studio come to life, filled with creativity and the steady hum of sewing machines. "Looks like you're building an empire here," Tom joked one afternoon as he watched us lay out fabric for a big order. Tom, on his side, didn't waste any time either. He used his share to buy 2 more trucks, expanding his fleet. "Gotta keep up with you, Erica. Can't have you outdoing me in ambition," he'd said with a wink. Hiring drivers came next, and soon, he had his own small but thriving transport company. It was a proud moment for us both, signing off on those trucks, knowing they were entirely ours, no loans, no debts hanging over us. Speaking of debts, we finally paid off the mortgage on our townhouse. Passing that last check across the bank manager's desk felt like lifting a weight off our shoulders. "All ours now," Tom had murmured as we walked back to the car, his arm snug around my shoulders. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm after that. Our businesses were doing well, which meant we could take a bit more time to enjoy the little things. Long walks in the evening, weekend getaways when we could squeeze them in, and plenty of quiet nights at home, just enjoying each other's company. But it wasn't just business thriving in our lives. Recently, we got some news that added a whole new layer of excitement. Turns out, I'm pregnant. The day I found out, I couldn't wait for Tom to get home. I paced around the kitchen, the positive test clutched in my hand, waiting to drop the bombshell. When he finally walked in, I blurted it out before he could even take his coat off. "Tom, we're going to have a baby." He froze, then broke into the biggest grin I've ever seen. "Really? We're going to be parents?" His voice was a mix of disbelief and joy. "Yeah, we are," I said, laughing as he swept me up into his arms, spinning me around in pure happiness. As for Linda, well, we haven't had much contact with her. Last we heard, she'd had to find a job to support herself and the kids. It's tough, but maybe it's for the best. Learning to stand on her own might do her some good, I figure. It's funny how life works out. There were times when I thought we'd never see the end of the turmoil. Now, here we are, our lives full and expanding like my belly, new beginnings that feel just right. We've got plans, big ones, for our family and our businesses. And whatever comes, I know we'll handle it, together. Because that's what we do best.